The envelope came in a thick cream parchment, sealed with a wax insignia Mallory had never seen before. It arrived on a Tuesday, buried beneath flyers and a utility bill. And it simply read, "You are requested to attend the reading of the late Jeremiah Vale's will, to be held at Ravenhall Estate, Essex County, Virginia." She hadn't heard that name in years. Not since the day her mother forbade her from ever contacting her father's side of the family. Now Jeremiah Vale was dead. Mallory hadn't been to Ravenhall since she was 8 years old, a summer estate, lost in time, swallowed by overgrown woods and fog-covered hills. Her memories of it were fractured. A massive iron gate, echoing marble corridors, the smell of lavender and wood smoke, and her grandfather, tall and silent, watching her with eyes that seemed to see too much. She booked the flight the next morning. The drive from Richmond was longer than she remembered, winding through back roads and dying towns. By the time she arrived at the estate's iron gates, dusk had settled. The gate stood open, almost as if waiting. A woman in black greeted her at the entrance. Marlene, the longtime housekeeper. Her face was thinner, but her eyes were the same stern, watchful. "Miss Vale," she said with a nod. "He expected you." Mallory hesitated. "I didn't even know he remembered me." Marlene didn't answer. Instead, she turned and led her through the grand entry hall of Ravenhall. The air was cold, dry. The portraits along the walls stared down with oil-painted judgment. She was not alone. 4 others were seated in the parlor, each holding the same cream invitation. A man in a pressed charcoal suit rose to greet her. "You must be Mallory," he said. "I'm Benedict Crow, the estate executor. We'll begin shortly." Mallory took a seat by the fire, noting the others. A woman in her 30s with platinum hair and a nervous smile. A couple in their 50s, clearly married, clearly uncomfortable. And finally, a young man in military fatigues sitting quietly in the corner, back straight, eyes wary. Crow cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I must inform you. The contents of this will are unconventional." Everyone exchanged glances. Mr. Vale left behind more than just assets. He left instructions. He pulled a leather-bound book from his case, opened it, and began to read. Mallory listened, expecting something dry and legalistic. But as the words came out, the room began to chill. "To those of blood and name," Crow read, "I leave a legacy of flame. If you are hearing this, then I am dead. But what I built, what I protected, still breathes." Mallory blinked. "What?" "Each of you has a part to play. Each of you will inherit if you survive." The fire snapped violently. Marlene entered with a tray of glasses whiskey, untouched, and placed them in front of each guest. Crow closed the book. "The conditions are clear. You will stay at Ravenhall for 7 days. At the end, the estate and all associated holdings will be granted to the last remaining heir." "Last remaining?" Mallory echoed. "He means," the soldier said quietly, "someone won't make it out." Silence. Crow smiled faintly. Mr. Vale had unique views on legacy. Mallory stood. "This is insane. You can't possibly be serious." "You are free to leave," Crow replied. "But if you do, you forfeit your claim." She looked around. No one else moved. The others seemed caught between disbelief and curiosity. Or maybe greed. "Then let the game begin," Crow said. And with that, the doors of Ravenhall shut for the night. Outside, a low wind began to howl, and deep within the house, something began to stir. The first night at Ravenhall was not peaceful. Mallory lay awake in the dim guest room, listening to the creaks and groans of the old house. Her thoughts swirled in loops. Her grandfather's cryptic will, the strangers gathered in the parlor, the strange heat that seemed to emanate from certain walls of the house. She'd felt it walking down the east corridor, a strange pulse beneath the wallpaper, like a heartbeat in the timber. At 2:13 a.m., a knock shattered the silence. 3 soft raps on the door. She shot upright in bed. "Who is it?" No reply. She grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand and crossed to the door. When she opened it, the hallway was empty except for a single object on the floor. A matchbook from the old Ravenhall greenhouse. It had burned down over 20 years ago. By morning, the others were gathered at the long dining table in the conservatory, eating breakfast off silver service. Crow was absent, but Marlene poured coffee with her usual steel-eyed calm. "Did anyone else hear knocking last night?" Mallory asked, voice casual. The platinum-haired woman introducing herself now as Livia Harper raised her hand. "Twice. But I figured it was the plumbing. The military man he went by Harris hook his head. I sleep light. Didn't hear a thing." The married couple, Edmund and Helena, exchanged glances but said nothing. Mallory reached into her pocket and placed the matchbook on the table. Livia stared. "That's not funny. That's from the fire." "What fire?" Harris asked. "The greenhouse," Mallory answered. "It burned down when I was a kid. They said it was lightning, but—" She hesitated. "I remember screams," Edmund spoke at last. "I was here that summer. I remember the smell. And the way the vines kept growing back no matter how much they cut them." Livia's eyes darkened. "I think he's testing us." Jeremiah. "To see what we're made of." Mallory nodded. "Then we better start playing." After breakfast, they were each handed a sealed envelope by Marlene. On the front, a single word. Challenge 1. Inside Mallory's was a riddle. "I grow without roots. I flourish in shadow. I burn but do not consume. Find me where the breath of the house gathers." No instructions. No prize. Just the riddle. Livia groaned. "What is this? An escape room?" But Mallory's mind was already racing. Grows without roots. Flourishes in shadow. Breath of the house. She left the table and began pacing the manor. The east wing, once a music hall, now stood unused. She stepped inside and froze. It was cold unnaturally so. Her breath fogged. And there, at the center of the room, sat an iron brazier. No fire, but ash clung to the edges. She bent down and saw a symbol etched into the stone beneath it. The Vale family crest. With one strange difference, the flame at its center was blue. She pressed her fingers to it. The floor groaned. Then shifted. With a low rumble, a panel in the wall opened, revealing a narrow passage behind it. Mallory descended a spiral staircase, lit only by flickering electric bulbs, their cords twisted like vines. At the bottom, a chamber lined with stone, covered in tapestries showing scenes of fire, battle, and ritual. And at the center, a small table with a journal. She opened it. Her grandfather's handwriting covered the first page. "Fire reveals truth. Let this place test your courage." She heard movement above. Someone else was coming. She grabbed the journal and slid into the shadows. Harris entered, flashlight in hand. He didn't see her. He crossed to the table, frowning, then picked up something Mallory hadn't noticed. A metal medallion, crimson with a serpent coiled around flame. A second riddle lay beneath it. Harris didn't stay long. Once he left, Mallory slipped out and followed him back up. That evening, they reconvened. Edmund had found a hidden poem in the chapel. Helena claimed hers led her into the wine cellar, where she discovered old bottles labeled with ciphers. One thing became clear. Everyone had a different test. A different piece of the puzzle. Crow returned with an update. Day 1 complete. One of you has earned an advantage. One of you has earned a warning. He turned to Harris. You took the medallion without reading the warning. You now carry a burden. Mallory's eyes widened. Harris looked pale. Crow turned to Mallory. You retrieved the journal. That was your test. You now may ask me one question. She didn't hesitate. What really happened in the greenhouse fire? Crow smiled faintly. A ritual. Interrupted. The room fell silent. Crow bowed. Good night. Day 2 begins at sunrise. Mallory returned to her room, but the shadows in the hallway felt closer now. and from the vent in her wall, she swore she heard someone whisper her name. Mallory awoke before sunrise, the voice from the vent still echoing faintly in her memory. She dressed quickly and found herself drawn to the east wing again, not to investigate, but to think. The brazier chamber was unchanged. Cold. Still. But something new had appeared since the night before. A chalk mark on the back of the hidden panel. A circle split by a vertical line. Harris's medallion bore the same design. Back at the dining hall, Crow greeted them with a grim expression. Day 2 begins now. As before, you will each receive a challenge. The house knows the truth in you. And today, it will ask more. Again, Marlene distributed envelopes. Mallory's riddle read, bound by oath broken in trust, I sleep beneath the guardian's dust, find the vow they buried. It made less sense than the first, but she sensed a direction. The family cemetery. The Vale graveyard lay behind the chapel, tucked between crooked trees. A long iron fence guarded weather-worn stones. One stood taller than the other, sure Great-Uncle Ellis, the only Vale to die in battle. A sword was engraved across his epitaph. She wandered the rows, eyes scanning for clues. The air grew colder near the far edge, where a willow tree hung over a cracked statue. A woman cloaked in ivy. The guardian, Mallory whispered. She knelt at the base. Something glittered beneath the soil. She dug carefully. A small wooden box, locked by a rusted clasp. When she opened it, she found a letter addressed to her in her grandfather's hand. Mallory, if you have found this, then the second seal is yours to break. The truth of our bloodline is fire. But fire needs choice. Read on only if you are ready. She read on. The pages spoke of a pact made generations ago. A ritual held in the now-burned greenhouse. A sacrifice gone wrong. Her great-aunt Lenora had tried to end the cycle. She had died in the attempt, but before she did, she hid the second sealone of 7. Each heir was meant to find one. But only those who faced their darkness would survive the process. Inside the manor, tension thickened. Edmund had injured himself, his right hand wrapped hastily in gauze. He claimed he'd slipped down the cellar stairs. Helena looked shaken but said little. Livia was furious. Someone moved my envelope. It wasn't where Marlene left it. Marlene replied evenly, the house moves things when it pleases. So did Jeremiah. Harris remained silent, but his eyes were bloodshot. Whatever burden the medallion carried, it was clearly weighing on him. That night, Crow reconvened them. The second seal has been claimed, he said, looking at Mallory. But something else has been awakened. He gestured to Harris. The burden you bear has begun to bloom. You must speak its name. Harris looked up, defiant at first. Then defeated. Cyrus Vale, he said. Mallory's heart skipped. Cyrus disappeared in 1908. Crow confirmed. He took the first seal and vanished into the house. His spirit was bound to it. Harris, your challenge was to carry that echo, and now it resides in you. Harris stood. You mean I'm possessed? Crow raised a brow. Not possessed. Partnered. Livia laughed nervously. This is all insane. Mallory said nothing. She held the letter tightly in her lap. Crow spoke once more. The house watches. It judges. And it prepares. Sleep lightly. As the others dispersed, Mallory remained behind. She approached Crow. What happens when all 7 seals are found? Crow's smile faltered. Then the gate opens. And you learn why Ravenhall was really built. That night, Mallory dreamed of fire. Not just flames but walls made of it. Voices chanting. A circle of figures around a burning tree. In the center, a child stood alone. And the child was her. She woke gasping. On her nightstand, the matchbook from the greenhouse was open. All the matches had vanished. Morning brought a fog so thick it swallowed the manor's east wing in a gray blur. The air was metallic, humming faintly with pressure, as though the sky had lowered to rest on the rooftop. Mallory stood at the window of her room, staring across the lawn. The old greenhouse ruin was barely visible through the mist. She hadn't mentioned her dream to the others. The burning tree. The child herself at the center of the ritual. But it clung to her, a presence behind the eyes. At breakfast, Crow entered with an uncharacteristically solemn tone. "Today," he announced, "the third seal will seek a bearer." He placed 6 cards on the dining table face down. One of these cards marks the path. The rest? Illusions. No one moved. Helena reached out and turned the first, a blank card. Edmund followed. Another blank. Mallory hesitated, then chose. Her card bore a single word. Reflect. Her new riddle came with it, scribbled in a hurried hand. To see the self is to brave the fire. Beneath the mirror where blood runs cold, seek the flame within. There was only one place in the manor where mirrors covered an entire room, the North Gallery. It had once been a ballroom, its walls lined with silver-backed mirrors that warped with age. As a child, Mallory remembered being frightened of that room, each reflection slightly off. Now she returned. The gallery groaned as she entered. Cold seeped from the walls, and the mirrored reflections of herself blinked slower than they should. At the center of the room stood a covered object. A mirror taller than the others, draped in black cloth. Mallory pulled the cloth away. She didn't see herself. The reflection showed the ballroom as it had been a century ago. Lit by candlelight, filled with dancers in crimson masks. In the center stood Cyrus Vale, raising a goblet in a silent toast. She reached out. Her fingers met the mirror and passed through. Mallory stumbled into the past. Everything shimmered with a reddish tint. Music played, hollow and distant. The guests didn't see hair or pretended not to. A woman approached. Her mask was bone white. Her voice, distant. "You follow fire but forget the ash." Mallory tried to speak but found she had no voice. The woman reached out and touched her chest. The vision shattered. Mallory woke on the ballroom floor, gasping. In her hand was an object she hadn't held before, a mirror shard, warm to the touch, with a sigil etched into the back. A flame inside a closed eye. Her third seal. Elsewhere in the house, things were shifting. Livia had vanished for hours. When she returned, her dress was soaked and her arms scratched. "I found a well," she whispered, with stairs. "They went down forever." She refused to say more. Helena and Edmund were arguing behind closed doors. Something about the ledger and what Jeremiah knew. Crow gathered them again that evening. "Mallory has earned the third seal." He held up the shard of mirror. "And now she must choose." Mallory frowned. "Choose what?" Crow gestured to the others. "To share what she saw, or remain silent. Each seal bears knowledge, but with knowledge comes danger. If you speak it aloud, it cannot be undone." Mallory looked to Harris, whose eyes were shadowed now with something older than himself. She looked to Livia, still trembling. "I saw Cyrus," she said finally. "I saw a ritual, a masquerade, and a warning. That following fire means forgetting ash." Crow nodded solemnly. Then the lights flickered. The hearth flared up suddenly, casting shadows like hands across the walls. In the center of the fire, for only a heartbeat, Mallory saw her own face, older, angrier, burning. Then the flames settled, and the night returned to silence. Mallory didn't sleep that night. The image of her own face, wreathed in flames, lingered in her mind like the taste of iron. She paced her room, reliving the words the woman in the mask had spoken. "You follow fire but forget the ash." What was the ash? What were they all forgetting? Just before dawn, a sharp knock came. This time it wasn't soft or ghostly, it was deliberate. She opened the door to find Helena standing there, dark circles under her eyes. "You need to see something," Helena said. "Now." Mallory followed her through the hallways, down the servants' staircase, past the pantry, and into a narrow corridor she didn't remember. At the end, stood a reinforced wooden door. Helena unlocked it with a key she refused to explain. Beyond the door, a small library, but not like the public one upstairs. This room was dry, tight, and smelled of old tobacco. Dust danced in slivers of morning light. A single book sat on the table. The Vale Ledger. Mallory stepped forward. "You found it?" Helena nodded. "Edmund didn't want me to show anyone. But he's different now. Paranoid. Keeps muttering about the names that aren't crossed out." Mallory opened the ledger. It listed dozens of names, family members, staff, even townsfolk. Each had a date beside it. Some were struck through with red ink. Others remained untouched. Then she saw it. Cyrus Vale 1928 uncrossed. And farther down, Mallory Vale, 2025, uncrossed. Her breath caught. "What does it mean?" she asked. Helena looked grim. "Crow said the seals choose their bearers. But Jeremiah, he marked us. Like players in a game. Those not crossed out are still in play. End of W. End of jobble line. End of jobble 2. Mallory's hands trembled. Later that morning, Crow appeared again, as punctual as ever. "Today is not a seal day," he said, "but one of reckoning. The ledger has been opened. The house will respond. Prepare yourselves." Harris raised a hand. "What kind of response?" Crow smiled faintly. "Judgment." They didn't see him again that day. The manor seemed alive. Doors opened to unfamiliar rooms. The greenhouse ruins smoldered, despite no signs of flame. And from the chapel tower, a bell rang every hour though. No one pulled the rope. Mallory returned to the ledger, poring over names. She noticed an odd pattern. Some names had been updated, as if someone continued writing long after Jeremiah's death. Then she noticed the latest entry. Livia Harper 2025 INK still wet. Mallory found Livia in the West Hall, curled on a chaise, staring blankly at the ceiling. "Are you all right?" Mallory asked. Livia didn't answer at first. Then, softly, "The well doesn't end." I kept going, and I heard someone whisper my name. But it was my voice, not theirs. Mallory crouched beside her. "I think the house is reacting to us, testing what's left." "I failed," Livia said. "I saw my name in the book." Mallory shook her head. "That just means you're still here." That night, thunder rolled in from the mountains. The lights flickered more violently than before. The hearth flared again, and from the smoke, a face emerged. Edmund's crast. He stood, eyes wide, then collapsed. Blood trickled from his nose. Helena screamed. Crow appeared moments later, seemingly from nowhere. "It has begun," he said. "The house has claimed a debt." Mallory knelt beside Edmund. He was breathing, but shallowly. His hand twitched, like it wanted to write. Crow continued. "Every heir must face a reckoning. Edmund's has come early. Helena, you must choose stay by him, or take his place in the next trial." Helena stared at her husband. Then, slowly, she stood. "I will take his place." Crow nodded. "Very well. The fifth seal will seek you." Mallory stood too. "What if we refuse to play?" Crow's eyes were firelight. "Then the house plays for you." Rain fell in sheets against the windows of Ravenhall. The storm had arrived in full, and the house groaned beneath its weight. Somewhere deep within its halls, bells rang, not the chapel bell, but something older, buried. Mallory sat with Livia and Harris in the drawing room, the fire crackling low. Helena had vanished with Crow hours ago. No one had seen them since. "I think we've lost control," Harris muttered. Livia nodded. "If we ever had it." Mallory looked to the hearth. "The seals. We were never meant to find them all. Jeremiah started something. And now, it's finishing itself." A gust of wind slammed against the window. A moment later, the front doors boomed open. Mallory rushed into the grand foyer. Crow stood soaked in the doorway, and beside him Helena. Pale. Shaking. Holding something wrapped in cloth. They entered silently. Helena handed the cloth to Mallory. Inside was a locket. Her grandfather's. Crow's voice was quiet. The sixth seal. Mallory opened it. Inside was no photo, just a sliver of paper bearing the words, "The ash remembers." The room seemed to tilt. Helena sat heavily on the stairs. "I saw the fire," she whispered. "The real one. The one that took Lenora. It was a ritual. But not just for power, for cleansing. She was trying to end it. To burn the pact Jeremiah made." Mallory nodded slowly. "And she failed." Crow turned to them. "Only one seal remains. But you must understand. The house survives through legacy. If you break the cycle truly, end it, it may not survive." "And if we don't?" Harris asked. "It continues," Crow said. "The next generation inherits the burden. Just like you." That night, Mallory dreamt of the ash. She walked barefoot through the burned greenhouse. Ghosts stood between the vine-wrapped columns watching her. One stepped forward. A young woman in black. "Lenora, you don't have to burn the house," Lenora said. "You just have to break the pattern." Mallory reached out. "How?" Lenora pointed to the earth. "The roots. That's where he hid the truth." Mallory woke with a start. She led Harris, Helena, and Livia into the greenhouse ruins at dawn. They dug where the center tree once stood. They hit metal. A lockbox. Old. Heavy. Inside. Documents. Photographs. And a final letter. Signed Jeremiah Vale. In it, he confessed everything. The blood pact. The seals. The ledger. And how he bound the house's essence to the family line. As long as a veil bore the seals, the house would live and feed. "I was wrong," he wrote. "Forgive me. Burn this. Burn me." Mallory didn't hesitate. She carried the box to the hearth in the great hall. Crow stood waiting. "This is the seventh seal," Mallory said. He nodded. She placed the box in the fire. Flames roared, instantly white. Not orange. Wind screamed through the manor as if it were gasping. Paintings fell from walls. Doors slammed shut. The ledger in the secret room caught fire without a spark. And then silence. The storm outside broke. Sunlight pierced the clouds for the first time in days. That evening, the group stood on the front steps of Ravenhall. The house stood, but it felt empty. Crow stepped forward, his eyes gentler than before. "It's done." "What happens now?" Harris asked. "You live," Crow replied. "For the first time, you truly live." He turned and walked into the forest, fading with the mist. Mallory looked back at the manor. She didn't feel anger. Or fear. Only peace. Behind her, Helena whispered, "What do we do with it?" Mallory smiled faintly. "Whatever we want."